Donald Trump is having a fantastic week because in the last 24 hours alone, he has scored 3 massive victories, which have sent the Democrats scrambling. He is winning in court, he is winning in Congress, and he is winning in foreign policy. And we are going to discuss all of those today. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton, and it makes sure my videos can reach all of my subscribers. But let's start with the most recent win as the Supreme Court overrules a Biden judge who said that Trump had to unfreeze federal funds for foreign aid. Watch.
Now to Washington, where an overnight move by Chief Justice John Roberts allows a U.S. foreign aid package to stay frozen for now. Roberts paused a district court order for the Trump administration to pay up millions by midnight Wednesday. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand. As you see there, she's live at the White House for us. Natalie, walk us through what we're hearing from the Supreme Court on this, how it reached its decision.
Good morning, Errol. And specifically what we're hearing from the Chief Justice, because it's Roberts who oversees requests for emergency relief from cases stemming from Washington, D.C. District Court. So that's why he made this decision last night, saying in this ruling that the administration did not need to immediately pay an estimated $2 billion in foreign assistance to pay for projects that had already been completed. Now, his ruling came after a federal judge here in Washington gave the State Department and USAID until midnight Wednesday to pay the bills.
So these Democrat activist judges keep overstepping their constitutional authority and keep trying to restrict the legal powers of the president. So Trump put a freeze on foreign aid after Elon Musk exposed how USAID was spending the money on these radical, progressive, anti-American projects, which is well within his purview, but these activist judges keep trying to file these temporary restraining orders and blocking Trump's executive actions. And this Biden-appointed judge ruled that Trump had to unfreeze the money for foreign aid. But the Supreme Court, who's frankly tired of these activist judges playing these games, ruled that no, he doesn't have to unfreeze the foreign aid and will wait until we actually hear the merits of this case from both sides. And that's the game plan with these Trump executive orders and moving quickly, is he knows that these courts are going to overstep, try to block, and ultimately they're going to be heard by the Supreme Court. And while Trump might not win all of these cases, despite what the Democrat media is trying to purport, Trump isn't doing anything unconstitutional or illegal. And an overwhelming majority of the rulings by the Supreme Court will inevitably be in favor of Donald Trump. And what's even more disturbing is what I learned about this judge when I did more research, which is he is a Canadian national and only became an American citizen in 2019, and then was appointed as a federal judge by Joe Biden. So what right does this radical progressive Canadian have to dictate and restrict what Trump can do as the duly elected president? So while the Democrats try to spin the actions of some activist judges as a win for the Democrats and a loss for Trump, the reality is all of these rulings keep getting shut down, and every single one that has at least made its way to the Supreme Court has been blocked and paused until the Supreme Court can hear more. So the second major win for Donald Trump is thanks to House Republicans who passed the budget bill, which is going to pave the way for the Trump tax cuts to be made permanent and also include things like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for seniors. But before I show you that, let's watch ghetto Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just a few hours before the vote say how Republicans weren't going to get it done and it was going to fall apart.
But we're in the minority. But so long as we stand strong and not one Democrat falters, let me tell you, there are going to be Republicans that don't want to vote for this, and they can't lose more than one vote. So long as we stand together and so long as we're here, and the Republicans, they're dysfunctional. They can't get this done by themselves.
Is this a preview to how Democrats will message leading up to 2026?
Saying fuck off.
Ah, what a shocker. She read the tea leaves wrong. The pretentious Democrat crystal ball that they all use to form their opinions turned out to be inaccurate again. It must be so embarrassing to be a Democrat right now. I mean, all they do is publicly lie, declare all these certainties, predict all these outcomes, just for everything not to go their way, and then they look like complete fools. Let's listen to Fox News talk about this bill and what it means going forward. Take a listen.
And last night, Republicans got together and did something that many thought couldn't be done, and they passed the one big, beautiful bill out of the House and now heads to the Senate. This, of course, includes a lot of the things that Donald Trump campaigned on, like extending the tax cuts and funding for border security. So now that it has passed by a very slim majority, what should Republicans know about this bill, and how could it impact their lives?
Yeah, well, Carly, first of all, this is our budget top line numbers. So this is going to go to the Senate, and we're going to see what the Senate sends back to us. But this actually sets forth, with arduous work and a lot of negotiations, getting to a point where we could have everyone on our entire caucus join here in making sure that we keep Trump's tax cuts permanent. Those tax cuts, if they expire, and I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, could be a $4.5 trillion tax increase, mostly to places like my district where it's middle and lower income taxpayers and small businesses. They're the ones that got most of the benefits from Trump's tax cuts, which is why you saw this huge burst in growth and in our economy when they first were implemented, and continues to today.
Just remember, these tax cuts were so popular that the Biden administration had the ability to remove them and didn't. But if you let the Democrat propagandists tell it, these tax cuts were for the wealthy, for the rich. But they know it's not true, and they know it would have led to a tax increase for middle class and lower class Americans, so they decided to keep them. So while it is true that high-income earners saw a larger dollar amount in tax reductions, middle class and lower class people saw a larger proportion of their tax bill go down. Someone paying $100,000 a year in taxes might have seen their taxes go down by $10,000, but somebody who was paying $7,000 in taxes saw their taxes go down by like $2,200. So proportionately, it certainly helped out middle class and lower class people much more. Hence the reason why Biden didn't get rid of them. Now, there's been a lot of outrage on social media from the supposed educated left, as they expose just because they're college educated doesn't mean that they have two brain cells to rub together. They keep saying, oh, there was nothing in the budget about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for seniors. But that's because this bill isn't meant to include those specifics. This bill talks about broad dollar amounts in terms of spending and expenses. This bill simply approved $4.5 trillion of tax cuts. The subsequent bills will talk about where that $4.5 trillion of tax cuts comes from. It'll come from extending the Trump tax cuts. It'll come from no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. But the liberal media just wants to fearmonger to tell them, oh, look, the Republicans lied. See, those things aren't in here. But they want to say, oh, the Republicans, they're going to cut the Medicaid, cut the Social Security, cut the Medicare, but conveniently leave out that this bill didn't mention cutting those things anywhere. Now let's move on to Trump's third win in the last 24 hours, which is him striking a $500 billion mineral rights deal with Ukraine.
Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy, and it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting a war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that it didn't happen for 4 years? Would have never happened. And nevertheless, this guy went into this situation and he spent money like nobody's ever seen, $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion. Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan, and we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion, nobody really knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that, but it means probably more than that. So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like very few people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Now, this is another thing the Democrats were saying was never going to happen. It was impossible. But if they want to keep doubting the negotiation skills of President Trump and keep getting proved wrong every time they open their mouths in public, so be it. let them continue. But President Zelensky of Ukraine will be at the White House tomorrow to finalize and sign this agreement, which will allow America to recoup the $200 billion we've sent to Ukraine, decrease our reliance on China for rare earth minerals, establish a presence in Ukraine which will act as a security deterrence against Russia, and bring this endless war closer to an end. Listen to Scott Jennings actually have to explain to these deranged Democrats that that's a good thing.
I'm willing to give the new administration some latitude to try to enact the political will of the people of the United States, and that is for this to come to an end. The political will to continue to funding an open-ended engagement is draining rapidly. I think you would acknowledge that. And so Trump here is a new broker on the field and has a chance to do something amazing, and that is to get these two people to stop fighting, and in that case would bring some stability to the continent of Europe. And, you know, what he has to say publicly about Russia or Ukraine over the course of time, I guess I'm willing to give them some latitude if the ultimate result is this, what Pete Hegseth said initially, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine, those were his words. The United States strikes a rare earth mineral deal with Ukraine. I would love that. And the governments in Europe decide that they do need to take a little more responsibility for their own national security. If these are the outcomes and the killing stops, they ought to give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize.
The Democrat Party is so anti-Trump. I mean, they're so Trump deranged that they've become the party who is defending mutilating kids, open borders, forever wars in Europe, continued government waste and corruption. If they had it their way, we would just keep pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine. Millions of people would die. Nothing would get accomplished. All for what? To say that we stand with our European allies. Zelensky even said out of the $200 billion we've sent, they've only received $100 billion. So where is the other $100 billion gone? I mean, we already know the answer. That's why they're so against Elon Musk and Doge uncovering things and looking into the payments. But if they had it their way, we'd send another $200 billion, another $400 billion, and they could take their 50% off top and keep their giant money laundering scheme alive. So I know I said 3 wins, but really it's 4 wins. The ones that I already talked about are the 3 major ones. This one's more of a ceremonial kind of win. But today, the Prime Minister of UK met with Donald Trump and presented him with a letter from the King of England inviting Donald Trump to dinner. Watch.
This is a letter from His Majesty the King. It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. So this is a very special letter. I think the last state visit was a tremendous success.
It was.
His Majesty the King wants to make this even better than that. So this is truly historic, an unprecedented second state visit, and he wants
honor.
to talk that through with you.
And that says at Windsor. That's
Yes.
really something.
Yes. What I haven't got yet is your answer.
Yeah.
I do need to.
The answer is yes. On behalf of our wonderful First Lady, Melania, and myself, the answer is yes, and we look forward to being there and honoring the King and honoring really your country. Your country is a fantastic country, and it'll be our honor to be there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I shall happily take that back to His Majesty.
But I thought the Democrats said nobody respected Trump. We were the laughing stock of the world. The King of England is a figurehead. It's a ceremonial role. So there is absolutely zero reason he would invite Donald Trump to dinner unless he genuinely wanted to. It's the Prime Minister that has to engage with Trump in a diplomatic way. But the King invited him because he respects him. One king to another. I was just trolling Democrats. Don't rip your hair out, please. It was just a joke. But what's not a joke is that Tulsi Gabbard discovered that at the NSA, the National Security Agency, the employees had a secret sex group chat where they would discuss fetishes and sexual identities and transitions with each other on the clock, on the American taxpayer dime. And she put a stop to that. Watch.
Well, Jesse, what we're going to do has already been done. There are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in this what is really just an egregious violation of trust, what to speak of like basic rules and standards around professionalism. I put out a directive today that they all will be terminated and their security clearances will be revoked. But the thing here, Jesse, is like we got to take a step back because this is just barely scratching the surface. When you see what these people were saying, and thanks to Chris Rufo for putting it all out online, they were brazen in using an NSA platform intended for professional use to conduct this kind of really horrific behavior. And they were brazen in doing this because when was the last time anyone was really held accountable? Certainly not over the last 4 years, certainly not over the last 10, maybe 20 years. When we look at some of the biggest violations of the American people's trust in the intelligence community. So today's action in holding these individuals accountable is just the beginning of what we're seeing across the Trump administration, which is carrying out the mandate the American people gave him.
So while Democrats are fighting to keep every single federal employee, claiming they're all essential and without them America would just crumble, this is actually the kind of depraved perversion that is happening on the taxpayer dime. And while the Biden administration prioritized this culture of inclusion, this kind of weird behavior was probably encouraged. But now that real adults are back in charge of the government, with a mandate from the American people to actually for once make the government fiscally sustainable and responsible and effective, this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. And if it's happening at the National Security Agency, just imagine how widespread it truly is. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and these massive Trump wins, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.